There is no name more synonymous with the action genre than Sylvester Stallone. 20 years ago, he burst on the American movie scene with his Cinderella saga, Rocky. What follows reads like a fairy tale. Rocky was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Screenplay and Best Actor, and took home the award for Best Picture. He solidified his A-list status with the success of the Rocky sequels and the Rambo series. This year, 20 years to the day that Rocky opened in theaters on December 6th, Sylvester Stallone stars in his 31st film. It is called Daylight, and here's a trailer from that film.
I was doing a jokey thing. Would you believe it?
That was from Daylight. 100 and how many days?
105.
Shooting in a tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And having done this film, Mr. Stallone would rather take the bridge.
You better believe it. Actually, Charlie, now when I drive, because I've just finished a film with Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel, it's a wonderful character piece. We had to drive through the tunnel a lot, and finally I can't take it anymore. I've become so paranoid. Next it'll be about an elevator, and I'll have to walk up the stairs. You know, like I'm slow. My options are diminishing quickly.
Fear seeps in when you do this thing. Let me talk about that other film for a second, because you mentioned it, and it is a small character film.
Mm-hmm.
Much talk about that. Why did you decide to do that and make the deal you did with Miramax?
Well, it's ironic that it was like the 20th anniversary of Rocky, and Rocky basically it wasn't really a one-man show. Even though it was called Rocky, it was totally dependent upon the support of all the other characters. And after doing, I don't know, around the mid-'80s, I started doing Rambo and First Blood, and this character kind of started something, the one-man band, the one-man army. And it became synonymous with myself, and then I became considered to be like monosyllabic, and the less I did verbally and the more I did physically was the way I was known. So I thought, you know, I have to stop this a little bit. I have to try to go back to what I enjoy more, and the premise is interacting with other actors. And then when Miramax came with Copland, they said, this is going to be difficult because you're going to have to completely divest yourself of what you've used for the past 10 years, which is you have to gain 30 pounds, you have to play almost 80% deaf, you have to be incredibly obsequious, fawning, shy. Everyone is going to be belittling you in the movie. I said, well, it sounds like my home life. It's okay. You know? What's the difference? You know?
Yeah, I can slip right into this. So you agreed to do it because, not for those reasons, but because what?
Well, because I felt that I was not deriving any pleasure anymore. I felt that the challenges were that of physical challenge and nothing to do with any kind of esoteric, any kind of reliance upon character work, where you are totally dependent upon how you act. In other words, you have no props. The scenario is quite simple, 2 men at a desk, and you cannot rely upon special effects, noise, music, whatever. And that's the way I entered this profession, and that's when Rocky was nominated. It really wasn't nominated because it was an action film. It was a character film. The same with Fist and Paradise Alley, and those are the films that I find myself really akin to. I thought, I better do it now. I just turned 50, and if I don't make, you know, that move, I'll never have the opportunity again.
But, I mean, how do you know yet how much you are gripped by this action genre? In other words, there are a couple of times in which you've tried to do other things,
yes,
and you've come to the realization, it's hard for me to get out of that character because that's what the audience wants from me.
Yes.
And they're disappointed when they don't get it.
That's true. That's true. I think it would be rather serendipitous of me to think that all of a sudden I'm going to have Dustin Hoffman's career. That's not going to, or Bobby De Niro's. It's just not the way I was perceived originally. I mean, I am perceived primarily more as a proactive performer. So this is just kind of what'd you say, like a sabbatical, where I think it sends out a message to me that, yes, I haven't completely foregone the type of acting and the kind of thrill I got that originally got me into the movies. But no, will I ever shed that image? No. And actually, I'm very proud of being aligned to like the Rocky ethics Quite frankly. I mean, it's something for... I think
Rocky stood for something.
It really did.
It stood for comeback. It stood for believing in yourself. It stood for...
Yeah, it's something that I think is basically inherent in just about every person on the planet, to want to have an opportunity to fail on their own terms. They may not make it, but they want the opportunity to try.
I want to come to Rocky in just a moment. Let me just stay with where you are today. 50. Was it hard for you?
Oh, it was hard. It really was hard.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought it was going to be, you know, quite easy. It'd be all autographs and sunglasses and just going from one piece to another, but it wasn't that way at all. It took a great toll on my private life, and I don't think I really had any solid foundation until within the past 2 years. So I don't know if that's just my nature, which I tend to think that I have that kind of nomadic nature, but more anything, it's just a restless penchant I have about constantly wondering if it's all going to end, and I have to produce at sometimes a rather detrimental pace.
Well, you've often said that you have to work, and that for you to be sitting back would be destructive to you and to your head.
That's true. That's true.
You've got to work because it's what you do.
Well, yeah, I think that there is a sense of, I mean, we could put any kind of label on it, but I think perhaps a sense of fear or vacuum or void.
Fear of?
Well, fear of not being able to say at the end of your life that you fulfilled all your fantasies or your desires, that you took the shortcut or the easy way, or you rested on your laurels. Like, quite frankly, if I were to say after Rocky, I would look in the mirror, if I were to do this, and say, okay, I have nothing more to prove. I came, I saw, I delivered, and now I can perhaps be validated. I did it. But the validation diminishes with the release of the film. By the time we wrap, like we just wrapped Copland, right, and already I've put that behind me, and I'm looking anxiously toward the next one.
And when, if you just wrapped, when will you start principal photography for the next film?
I wish it was today.
You're happiest when you're acting?
I think so. I think so. There was a quote, I think, that was attributed to Frank Capra, that when he was on the movie set, this was his reality. And when he would drive home at night, he said, this was fantasy. This was unreality. This is a place that he felt quite alien.
Yeah. And you're most comfortable there because it's a place that you have ruled. It's a place that you know you've done. You know.
Yes, and more importantly, I think it's a place where I feel that I can contribute, that I understand, that I am a valid participant. Whereas I've tried, many other jobs, and when I was on my way up, and I never felt as though I could ever fulfill them in a very beneficial way. I just didn't have the concentration or whatever it took to become successful. I've always felt as though I wanted to be in something that was rather mysterious and fanciful.
Yeah. How lucky you are, and me, and others who fall into something or get there because of drive and to do what you most enjoy doing. I mean,
yes.
When you think of what small percentage of the people in the world who are doing exactly what they want to do.
I know. I think of myself.
And being recognized for it, too. And every day you can go home and can't wait to get back.
Exactly.
To the field.
Exactly.
To the action.
I think that people like ourselves and performers in general are the luckiest people on the planet. They really are. They have the gift of communication, of actually being heard, of having a forum, which is so rare. And I think one of the main elements of frustration in just about everybody in every walk of life, very few people are understood or are given a moment to express oneself. Right. And here we are.
Yeah. The money. You are, I suspect, by most observers, a highest-paid motion picture star ever.
Well,
I don't know, but anyway, you're in there, and you're a contender if you're not number one. Is it a way now of just keeping score, or does it mean something else, the money?
That's a good question. I think that there is, if people were to say that the money at a certain point is not important, I think they would be reveling in a serious case of mendacity. I believe that when you get to a certain level and you see one performer is getting a number right away, you feel as though, okay, to be respected, it becomes a numbers game. I think more importantly it is to the agent than quite often it is to the actor. For example, in the film I've just completed, I was paid nothing, zero.
It's Copland.
Absolutely nothing. I mean,
yeah, you get some back-end profit if it
does.
If
you
it
know,
does
you take a gamble. But see, that to me is, I've never been, quote, a mercenary. At one time I thought I was, but it's not about money. Otherwise I wouldn't waive this and I would take the safe route. I feel.
And it's not about buying more art or buying more cars or buying more homes or any of that stuff. You're way beyond that.
No, really, I have all the material comforts one needs. Now it's all about the library of memories you leave behind.
The body of work.
Exactly right.
If somebody came that a director that you most wanted to work for,
yes,
and who had a brilliant story and a script that you wouldn't even tamper with, it's so great.
Yes.
And could be a
well,
piece of
you're
work.
asking a lot there.
I mean, I've heard stories.
Yeah, I haven't been tampering
If
for a while.
you give a script to Stallone, he's going to change it.
Well, only
because it goes back to when he wrote his own, and he doesn't think that there's a script alive that he can't make better.
There was that, but now, you know what that comes from? It comes from actually jumping into projects that are premature.
Yeah.
And quite often I had done that. Like, for example, with Rennie Harlan and Cliffhanger,
right.
I knew the property was a wonderful property, the project. It was an interesting format. It deals with, you know, the innate fear of acrophobia and so on. But the script wasn't ready, and I knew that. So with Rennie's blessings, literally the script was produced 4 days before we started filming. So it wasn't as though I said, okay, I'll do this, but I have to tear it apart. It's always with the, I guess, the support of the support group.
Yeah.
I have at times, at one time, I did do that, but it wasn't as though to give myself better lines. I just felt as though if I could help the structure. See, that's the curse. That also is a curse. I wish, and I do so now, but you could just show up, do your job, keep your lip zipped, and go home. And it's a very, very nice.
Well, I know. I know exactly what you're doing. You'd like just to be able to come and act and everything else, to everybody to have done it in a way that it couldn't be better, because your life is much easier.
Exactly.
You come do the thing and you just concentrate on the acting. You also have this reputation. You know exactly how you look. You understand how you photograph well. You understand the mechanics of what Sylvester Stallone is about.
Exactly.
Where'd you get that?
Well, that comes from directing, and I really learned a great deal about it when I was working with John Travolta in Staying Alive. I learned the power of the camera and how certain angles could enhance one, because John in that film, you know, visually looked magnificent, and so I got to study him. It was interesting, and so when I did my next film, it became a necessity to look one's best. And then again, but afterwards, most recently, I found I became dependent upon, okay, I could not feel comfortable enough the camera was in this position and that position. So when I did this film with James Mangold and with Bobby and Harvey Keitel, whatever, they did whatever they wanted. Here, there, whatever. And you know what?
So you let the cinematographer go wherever he or she wanted to go.
And the irony is, they look better than the other way.
So you've been wrong all along.
I blew it for 10 years. So now I'm never going to open my mouth again about that.
Yeah.
But I think it just plays into certain insecurities. You know, you want, you do one film a year, a film and a half a year. You're just looking for every edge that it delivers. And quite often, when insecurities come to the forefront, quite often it's about the way you appear physically, and that again has become a thing of the past. But it was a phase I definitely went through.
What do you mean a thing of the past?
Well, now, like after having just completed Copland and having looked at the dailies, I realized that you cannot be spontaneous, free, if you're constantly playing to a fractionated camera, that if you digress this much from the optimum level, you're going to be, quote, in a bad light. I didn't care anymore.
Yeah. So if you're not worried about where you sit, then you can concentrate on what's coming out of your head about this character.
Exactly.
Or your soul, or where it comes from.
Like, for example, the only people that look good from a low-angle shot right here is usually when you're about 11 months old. You get away with it. After that, you have some serious shadows, okay? You go from 11 months, and then you become, at 1 year old, you become like baby Frankenstein, and it gets progressively worse as you get older. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care, and I think that was kind of a liberating feeling.
What actors had the most influence on you?
I think Peter O'Toole was an extraordinary influence. Not that I could ever come close to his talent, but I just was in awe of the magnitude of his range of emotions and the way he'd get there. And I know that a lot of it he was dealing with a technical premise, because I know I had read a great deal about him. He would have some days he would not be on his game, but he delivered beautifully. As a young man, it was undoubtedly Kirk Douglas. Very much so.
Wouldn't you love to have the longevity of his career?
Oh, please.
Man, I mean...
and you know what's interesting is because he came from an area, the actors about 40 years ago, not all of them started out to be actors. Some of them were soldiers of fortune, you know, the Errol Flynns, whatever. And they brought something different. They brought a very unmannered, that was them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting.
People like Spencer Tracy.
That was it. Yeah. I mean, did Spencer Tracy ever go to acting school? I mean, did he? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. You know, and people like Brando, that was Brando. It was, I don't care if he went to actor studio, they didn't really mold him. That's his engine. That's his modus operandi.
What is this hold that Brando has on so many actors?
Well,
I mean, people look at him and say...
Well, he was the first ultra-cool actor. I guess it was a hipness that this country had been kind of like very formulated and I think regimented, and the actors were alpha actors. You know, rightful. He had a
John Wayne's of the world.
Very much so.
And then he comes along in the 50s.
With a very strong feminine side.
Yeah.
Okay? And in other words, he was willing to open up. He was willing to drop his voice down and do mannerisms that other actors, you know, we do with the chin. He was like, he would try to almost avoid the camera in a shy way at times, yet still you knew that underneath that was a very powerful personage and persona. So I think that since he's the only one that is still alive, that he has been held in reverence.
James Dean just worshipped him.
Oh.
You know, the one-person Dean, and copied him.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's kind of like golfers. You know, you find a swing, and you say, oh, I may not be as good, but I try to copy that move a little bit.
You also have a reputation for knowing you got to take care of this that served you so well. I mean, you take care of yourself in terms of diet, in terms of exercise, in terms of all that stuff. And then you take this role in Copland. You are supposed to be, what, 20 pounds overweight?
30
pounds overweight. I mean, was that hard for you to say, I'm going to let it go, or did you say, at long last, I can do what I want to do without discipline in pursuit of my art?
I wish it was that easy. I went through serious withdrawals.
Withdrawals?
Oh, yeah.
From exercise,
yes,
from the pumping every day?
Yes, because it became I became psychologically dependent upon it.
Psychologically?
Oh, yes, very much so. When you have become so familiar 30 years with a certain pattern, and then at least the last 15 years of being very attuned to your body's every different angle and whatever, and maybe knowing that perhaps, unfortunately, you're known for that. Yeah. So you have to keep it up much more so than I think is a healthy outlook on life. And when I had to let it go, and I went from a 30.5-inch waist to 39, thank God my girlfriend was pregnant at the time, because I said, I kind of understand.
And I kind of timed this about right.
Yes, it was perfect. So we were just swelling together. Yeah. But it did take a toll in the beginning. I just wouldn't let it go, and I wouldn't let it go. And finally, with the support of the director and the producer, Harvey Weinstein, I just went, okay, bring on that cheesecake, you know, French toast for everybody, let's go. And it became an eating marathon. You know?
The sauces are okay now.
It was full on.
How do you feel about being a new father?
I love it. I really do. I think I was not qualified the first time. I don't think I was focused, for lack of a better term. It was just after Rocky won, and all hell had broken loose. And I think having lived the, I guess, poor boy syndrome for so long, now the gates to fantasy were open.
Yeah.
And I kind of abused it a great deal, and I took it a little too far. And I believe my private life did suffer a great deal from it. My
private life suffered, meaning?
Well, it took a toll on the marriages.
Yeah.
It took a toll, I think, on imaging. I don't think I was perceived the way I wish I had been perceived. But now looking back, everything I got, I was entitled to. So in the way of, being scorned. But that's okay. It's all right. I guess I had to learn the hard way. I've had a very, very interesting career. I think that every kind of cliche, every kind of mistake one could make, I have made. So when I discuss it with other people, I'm coming from a place that I know exactly what you're talking about.
But you seem to be comfortable with that. I mean, you look back at what you have done and where you are, and you seem to say, sure, I made a mistake, and sure, I was a fool at times, and sure, I indulged myself at times, but I earned it, Yeah. And secondly, I understand, and I'm different now. Yes?
Yes, very much so. I think that it's very hard, unless you put on someone else's shoes and walk the route that they're walking, to kind of judge them. I believe that Hollywood and success is an incredibly warping formula. It does distract one, and I feel these people that have been able to keep their heads on straight are really extraordinary individuals that have held their marriages together and have been very focused in their career. I think they deserve all the kudos and accolades you can give them, because people, it is not easy. It is not easy.
And you have to be there to know.
You really do have to be there to know. There is temptations, there's distractions, there's insecurities, there's ego assaults, there's ego inflations. You're not living a normal life. You're in a suspended state of reality. This is not real what you do. You are in the profession of pretending. You're a professional pretender. And quite often that pretending, that overblown sense of I am all these different characters, kind of breaks through the levee and goes into your private life, and it affects it a great deal.
In other words, if you're in public, it's like you leave a wake behind you, because people know who you are, and there's an ensemble around you.
Yes.
But when you go home, you're saying, sometimes it's hard to forget that whenever you're in public, everybody is there to do, whether it's a table at a restaurant, whether it's saying, we love you, Mr. Stallone, whatever it is. And your wife is saying, hey, jerk.
Yeah. You know what?
I've been here with your sons.
Too, yes.
You know?
Very much so. And I think that I know that I felt as though it was an unreal situation, and I felt reality was on the movie set. I felt more comfortable there, and that was a very wrong way to think. But I was raised in a certain kind of environment where escapism was somewhat necessary. So I've always...
because of what it was like with your parents at home?
Yeah, I mean, my parents, I suppose, did the best they could, but I had a certain lifestyle, and I moved around a great deal that having a solid foundation or a habitual routines, daily routines, that is, was really non-existent.
Here's what I'm interested in. I mean, you wanted, as a kid, you wanted to be some kind of artist, right?
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't a movie star as much as it was you wanted to be a creative person of some kind. What shaped someone to want that? I mean, when you look at your early life, why do you think you didn't want to be a lawyer, didn't want to be a banker, didn't want to be a business executive, wanted to be something, a poet or a writer or something?
I could say that quite often, if you have a sense of isolation, quite often if you feel isolated, I think that you can turn your hatred or your inability to be loved in a very negative form. Some people are lucky enough to have a creative outlet, and that was my blessing. I understand when they say, well, people come from abused homes and whatever, they may not have, quote, an artistic outlet. They have a physical outlet, and it comes out in a way of violence and so on and so forth. I really believe that everything is just, it's genetically oriented. Why do you have 5 brothers in the same family and each one chooses does something different? They've all had the same upbringing, the same food, they've basically dressed the same way, same schooling, yet they're so diametrically opposed. So I think that it's just the wonder of life, you know, the billion to one chance.
Did you say to yourself then, before Rocky, I'm going to make it come hell or high water? I don't care what they do, and I'll pay any price, do anything.
No, I didn't. I was not willing to do that because I used to have long talks with my friend John Hertzfeld, who had just directed 2 Days in the Valley. And I said, John, what if we don't make it? He goes, that's not possible. I said, all right, let's just pretend it's, because that can't happen. I said, John, it can happen. He goes, you can never think that way. I said, John, I ain't think that way. So right then, I started to think about alternatives. And that's when I turned to writing and took to painting more seriously. I thought that, if I didn't make it in acting, which I didn't really fully expect it, I thought I would be the perennial heavy who gets beaten up by Woody Allen or Jack Lemmon, and I was always a fellow who was like, you know, having, all right, get out of here, you mug, you know, that kind of a thing. I thought that this is the way I was perceived, that I would go into writing, because contrary to what I may look like, I tend to be somewhat withdrawn, and I do enjoy introspection. I do enjoy writing. I do enjoy poetry and reading, you know, the classics. And I know that people say, oh yeah, you're sure, because it's on television, but I do. I mean, I've started all the way back with, you know, Puritan literature up to present day, and I derive a great deal from it. I feel as though I'm filling up some sort of reservoir. Then I thought, okay, if I didn't make it as an actor, writer, painter, I would have gone into something in the physical vein, something where I would like to have been a coach of some sorts, because I enjoy motivating a great deal. I really do. I like to motivate.
Everybody around you?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
You want to direct more?
Yes, I do. I think that in the next perhaps 2 years, I would like. I enjoyed the process. Then again, I was living another life then. I would like to try it now.
What does that mean?
Well, because I was like a gypsy. I would be gone. Like my son, for example, at 20 years old, I don't think I was home for more than 6 years out of 20. So that's what I mean. I would never sacrifice that again with my daughter. Never,
what did that do to your relationship with?
Well, luckily, my wife was a brilliant mother, and he's grown up to be completely sane and wonderful.
Notwithstanding the fact his father was away from home.
Exactly right, and he's done something that I think is unique. He didn't try to compete with me. If he saw a gym, he'd run away. If he saw anything that had to do with what I was about, he would be kind of like almost repelled by it. And I don't know if he did that, I think, subconsciously, and now he's found his own way, his own identity. He's not put himself into a competitive position.
How much of it is luck? And how much of it is just timing? I mean, you came along with Rocky, a script that you believed in. You did not and would not take their money unless you could star in it. I mean, that's part of the Stallone legend, right?
Yes.
I mean, you had, and because you did, Best Picture, 10 nominations, not?
Yes.
You got 3 awards, including Best Picture. And it made you, overnight, your life was different.
Never been the same since.
Never been the same. But I mean, you had opportunity, you created opportunity.
Yes.
You'd worked at that script for how long? 10 years? I mean, a long time, huh?
Well, it was percolating a great deal.
Yeah, percolating. But how much of it is luck? How much of it is just sort of...
Oh, so you know, people say like, oh boy, you just hit a very lucky golf shot. I said, no. I intended it to hit in that direction. So yes, you can say it, but it's not really luck. Here's where the luck factor is being able to somehow come across some people that are receptive, are sensitive enough to see what you have as a viable product.
It's not luck that you have it.
No.
It's luck that somebody...
It's luck that they were there.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, we were talking about this the other night, Medal of Honor. There are a lot of men that have done things much braver than those who win the Medal of Honor. The difference is that for those who win, somebody saw them do it.
Exactly.
You know, they had, you know, Bob Carey, who won a Medal of Honor, told me the story. I wasn't braver than most of the people I served with. It's just that when I did what I did, when I lost part of my leg, Someone was there and saw it and wrote about it, and all of a sudden it goes up the process.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
But wasn't luck that I did it.
No.
But somebody saw it, and it was a moment. Yeah.
Somebody happened to be in the office at the right time of day when I brought the Rocky script, who happened to be in that frame of mind, who happened to be that kind of filmmaker. Let's say I brought Rocky to a producer. It was originally Shardoff and Winkler.
Right.
Let's say I brought it to a producer who specialized in high-powered action films. You say, no. And that might have been the end of it, period. But I brought it to these people who kind of like in those days specialized in smaller films. It was just a miracle. And here's how it worked. It's true. I was there for actually an acting audition, and things were going not too well. And on the way out, the door was just about closing. I leaned back in the door. I go, oh, by the way, I write a little bit. And he goes, really? Come back in. So you mean it was just
actors we don't need, writers we need.
Yeah, it was just like if I had forgotten to say that at that moment, maybe everything would have been different. So I owe, like those two producers, no matter what has ever transpired between us, I owe them my life. I mean, they were...
Who else do you owe big time to?
I would have to say that, in my professional life, those two I owe a great deal. And I think I have to say that, oddly as it may sound, my parents, who unwittingly, I think just through the combination of the genes and whatever, and the way I was brought up, somehow triggered it all. Let's just say the entire relationship was harmonious and sanctimonious and just one big love fest. I may have said, I'm going to stay here on the farm forever. But sir,
see, we had, the other day, we had a discussion about birth order. It was a big story about birth order. It's a new book a guy worked on for 25 years.
Yes.
And here is what comes out of that. One, that if you are first born, you have certain kinds of, and he has proven this over 25 years of study, you have certain kinds of characteristics. If you are later born, you have other kinds of characteristics. If there was great conflict in your family, all bets are off, which is where you are.
You bet. You bet. So I had my mother, who was, very outspoken, kind of a eccentric and theatrical personages. My father, who was, a real physical individual who also had aspirations of having a theatrical life, but these dreams are somewhat quelled by their financial situations, and so I luckily emerged from all this, and so I think that has so much to do with it. I mean, I really do believe that it's not completely an accident. I really believe that we do inherit certain kind of instincts.
What haven't you been able to do that you very much have wanted to do?
Well, I don't think that I've performed in the kind of venues that I would like to have performed in, and I take full responsibility for that. I think that, again, I was moving along at a pace where I was not paying very, very close attention. Quite often some of the films would do very well, and then we don't, and I would not learn from success. I would learn through failure. So when some of the films didn't work, I went, I am moving further and further away from what I am, what got me here. Therefore, with this new film, Daylight, which again is quite different performance than one would tend to recognize in an action film, and with the advent of Copland, I've now gotten back to what I think is really my natural inclination.
When I think about the possibilities and put this in context, it's Clint Eastwood's career. Clint Eastwood's had a career.
Yes.
One successful movie, but he's also experimented. He's directed. I mean, there's a career to admire in terms of stretching, yet at the same time never losing his connection with the audience and who he is.
Well, that's very important. I think, for example, if I were to abandon what I am perceived to be, reject that audience, they would take that as, more than a lover's quarrel. They take it as quite a slight.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you have to, as Clint did so brilliantly, balance the two, as Bruce Willis is doing now, balancing the two.
From Pulp Fiction to Die Hard, yeah. You really do have to, two things that struck me about what you have done. One is you got to respect the audience. You got to come and say, these people,
Yes.
you know, I put them in the seats, but
Yes.
I got to, you know, and I got to make sure that I am doing what's necessary
Exactly.
to take care of them. It's taking care of business, as Elvis
Right.
used to say.
Right.
The other thing that strikes me about it is that you got to constantly, in a sense, say you're responsible for stretching too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody's going to come to you because the people who make movies, would just be happy for you to make one action venture after another. I read a thing where the guy who gave you $20 million or whatever it was for the film said, "It's the best deal I ever made." And you can understand it because it's a certain, in today's world, what you do is the most marketable product in motion pictures. Yes?
Well, it translates worldwide.
Because of your international star.
Yes, exactly.
Do they see you in Japan the same way they see you in the United States?
No.
How do they see you there? As a kind of mystical hero of some kind?
I think they perceive action performers bigger than life, and they tend to put a little bit more the awe factor around them.
Yeah.
You know, much more so than the Americans, which I think are a little bit more grounded in seeing that, oh yes, we read about these people every day and so on and so forth. They're not as mystified by us.
How difficult is it not to become the character in your head a little bit? You know, not just, we talked about the idea of all the things that surround you if you are a huge movie star.
Yes.
But also, if you play the kinds of roles, not that you're going to go around beating up people or do these extraordinary things, but in a sense, as they said about George Patton imagined what a general ought to be.
Yes.
And he became that
Yes.
in his head, in his actions.
Yes.
So pretty soon, that notion was who he
24
felt
hours
like
a
he
day.
was. Yeah. And this is not for motion pictures. This is being a general and winning wars.
Exactly. It's a mindset. It's, as you know, like in golf, it's in the zone.
Yeah.
And when I don't know how the public perceives Rambo, but Rambo is a person that borders on, you know, in that netherworld of extraordinary rejection and an incredibly skilled individual who is positioned to take other lives in the name of this country. And then he's brought back and basically said, we don't need you anymore. And it's like turning loose a Doberman pincer, saying, okay, go in the street and have a good time.
And we taught you to kill, but we don't need you anymore.
We don't need you anymore. So that character, since he wasn't verbal, I would go very, very deep and try to find, you know, be knocking on my brainstem in there, say, let's get as primitive and as physically motivated as one can be. So it began to change the way I would walk, the way I would look, the way one would move. It became almost animalistic. It wouldn't be like, oh, you look at a corner like that. If I would turn, it'd be home. You'd be ready for anything at any time.
Yeah.
And though I hate to admit it, it was a 24-hour-a-day occurrence, and I was not the most pleasant person to be around. It's like, we're having dinner with tonight. Rambo, thanks, I'll pass. Okay? Let me know when Rocky shows up, all right?
It's like, because I like Rocky a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah. And as Rocky, I would just hang around with these street kind of characters until that became a certain kind of lilt in the way one walk. And
you'd hang with them.
very much so. And Rocky would never take anything. He was very self-effacing. It was okay, and people could say anything that they want to me. All right, sorry, we're foreclosed on your house. No problem.
No problem. Judge yourself as an actor. How do you?
I think that I think of myself as being I respond very much to the theme of redemption. I think I'm a very emotional person, and when I can sink my teeth into something, I'm an emotional actor. The physical aspect of it was really a secondary accoutrement, you might say. I didn't start out to be that way. So I would say as an actor, I would be perceived more in the dramatic vein, but like heavy, You know what I mean? More lugubrious, more ponderous. But my real nature is not that at all. I mean, you know, I tend to try to look at life for all its follies and enjoyment, and I'm always looking for, you know, the mirth. Yeah. The joy, the fun, the laughter.
But why is it the perception, just the character you inhabited?
That's just it. You know, again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but a very odd occurrence happened to me, and that is many actors, many performers are very fortunate that they can play close to themselves. Yeah. So what you see there and what you see there, they're able to translate that without having to go through a great deal of characterization, but they're very good at what they do. Because of Rambo.
Is Redford that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he seems to be on interviews very much the way he is there, and that's great.
Right.
I mean, he's lucky. Somehow things get dyslexic, whereas I am perceived as, oh God, don't say anything loud around him. He's very moody. He's not articulate. He's monosyllabic. He's the master of the malapropism. Forget it. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's uneducated. Be careful. Walk on eggshells. When in reality, that's the performance. In the way I am with you right now is the way I am. But people will look at this and say, that's the performance. The way he is on screen is the reality. It's all backwards. It's very fun. Who was I reading about that today? That Anthony Hopkins, for example. Not to align myself to Anthony.
But there's a profile of Vanity Fair, is probably where it was.
Yeah, he's very upbeat. Yeah. He's a very, very outgoing, funny, you know, he loves to banter, but he plays these very quiet, withdrawn, stilted people. And he says it's like driving with his brakes on. It's like, you know, there's this thing that wants to come out, but that's the way he's perceived.
Would you trust on the screen letting the thing come out that is really, that's you?
I have to try it. I have to try it.
But have you tried it yet? And have you let it go?
Close.
With?
I came close with Paradise Alley, and actually I came close with Oscar. And I believe that was a move in the right direction. The film didn't work for various reasons, but the character was out there, and I believe that if you can really portray honestly what your essence is, I think it will work.
If I show you a film that you've done and tell you what the critics have said about it and the fact that it didn't do well, the public didn't buy it, your audience didn't buy it, would you generally tend to agree and say, I know they didn't, and I know why they didn't, and I can tell you why that movie didn't work?
Yeah, for sure.
Give me an example.
All right. Well, I believe that Oscar, what primarily didn't work in that, I think, was the timing, was in the editing. There were gaps in there, for example, that were automatically assumed that there were going to be preordained laughs. Yeah. So instead of
it didn't have a natural rhythm.
No, it didn't. It had a very mechanical one to set up, and I thought that was wrong. I think, for example, in Assassins, what didn't work is it should have been harder, nastier, more dirty. We are assassins. We're not Quakers. Yeah. You know, that I felt, and I'm not putting the blame on anyone. I'm just saying what it should have been. I think it should have been now, in retrospect. And it's my fault too. It should have been darker. The Specialist. What happened there was, I believe that the director of that particular film was not given enough time, because it was done very quickly, to delve into the dark side, the people that live in the shadows. I wanted that to be extremely erotic and dark and mysterious and again, like shadow people. But that takes a great deal of time and experimentation and intricate camera movement. So things like that. And he was a competent fellow. It was just a matter of the mechanics didn't work out.
Did you know that before the film hit the theaters?
I've known, yes. Yeah, I've been there. I said, like, you know, 1 week in the Rhinestone, I went, okay, now I kind of feel like what William Tell's son felt like, you know, don't hit me in the forehead with the arrow, Dad, you know. You kind of know when things aren't, especially when the crew is throwing eggs at you.
Yeah, that tells you, doesn't it?
You know.
But you can feel it when a film is working. You can tell before you see a rush, or whatever they call them.
Yeah, before you see the dailies. You know, there's kind of the best things that have ever happened for me, there was almost an effortlessness. It was going along smoothly. All the pieces fit, Charlie. You know, the puzzle was working.
Yeah. It's like an interview has a groove, and when you're in the groove, you know it's going to go.
Exactly
it's gonna
right.
Play.
Well, like when I was working on Judge Dredd, I knew halfway into it, I said, there's no humor in this. This is based on a cartoon, and it's not funny. So, okay. So every day to put on those leotards, you know, that uniform was like, oh, God, here I go. You know what I mean? It's like, why don't I just I felt kind of like a you know, a prison guard. Oh, here I go in the cell block 9. I hope I come back alive. You know?
If you had to take one of them with you and say, this is for me. This, of all the films I made, there's one I want to take with me. Would it be Rocky 1? Or would it be?
Well, I tell you, this one I've just finished, Copland, is very good too. I think it'd be a toss-up between the, yes.
You feel that good about it?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it's more.
It's very important, very deep, very humanistic, and extremely relatable, and I think it has the essence of what Rocky had, very much so, with the bonus of being surrounded by, you know, some of the most brilliant actors in America today.
De Niro,
Keitel, Ray Liotta. You have Michael Rappaport, Annabelle Sciarra,
and so you
Janine Garofalo.
You come out of that experience saying, Harvey, I want to do this again?
Yes, very much.
You
so.
did?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, absolutely.
Can you balance it too? I mean, so you can do.
I think that, yes, I was thinking about that this morning, that the ideal life for me would be to do the audience-pleasing film and the one that I hopefully would enjoy myself, and then to do the acting piece where we throw caution to the wind, where that is the one where you do your Leaving Las Vegas or you do your Last Tango in Paris, and you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
But you're just throwing your viscera on the table and say, here I am. Yeah. And then go back. Kind of, to an extent, what Clint did. Yeah. And that would be
well, Nick Cage, Leaving Las Vegas, at the same time did The Rock.
The Rock, yeah.
And said at the same time, I did one for commerce and I did the other for art. That's what it was about.
And I think your audience appreciates that. Yeah. I really do. I think that's when they understand there's a lot more to the character.
Yeah. What's interesting in talking to you, it clearly is not formula. Even the action, as much as it is you doing certain kinds of things. Because if it was formula, every one of them would be a home run.
Yes.
But they're not.
No.
I mean, it says something about, you get Stallone and you can have him do a lot of things and you can have all the pyrotechnics you want, but not necessarily a home run.
No, you're absolutely right. I think that is dependent upon the persona of the actor. For example, Arnold is a different kind of, quote, action fellow than myself.
How is that?
Well, he does a certain kind of action film that relies upon some comedic overtones and sometimes bigger than life moments, and he pulls them off with a great deal of flair. Whereas Bruce Willis, his kind of action is, at times sardonic, a little sarcastic, in your face. I'm going to do it. A great deal of bravado, and he's take charge kind of fellow. I find that the ones that I do best are the ones where my character is not the ones that have performed the best. He's not so certain it's going to turn out. Yeah. he's dealing with great insecurities and flaws, and he's trying to overcome it. It's like in the most important scene in Rocky 1, for example, is when he comes home and realizes he can't win, and he knows he's going to be beaten without mercy, but that's okay, as long as he gets a chance to stand up at the end. And I think that kind of perception of me, where when I walk in chest first, like, follow me, that doesn't work for me. It may work for them, but that doesn't work for me. So I think when I become Teflon or impervious, or that nothing can happen to this character, you could send on the entire Russian army, earthquakes, locusts, it's not going to work for me. But it may work for him. Yeah. Very much so.
Would it do, if I had enough millions of dollars to put you and Arnold in the same film, would it necessarily bring in both audiences, or do they overlap so that you wouldn't get, you know what I mean?
Yes.
In other words, you wouldn't double your money by having both of you there, because in a sense, the people who watch you watch Arnold. There's a kind of, you know.
Are you saying would it work?
Yeah, well, of course it would work. I think it would work, I assume, if there was a story and a, you know.
Yeah, I think it would have to be, we'd have to, it'd be interesting because we'd have to meet each other in the middle, whereas perhaps the humor may have to be toned down a touch, and the pathos perhaps, or the let's say the grand suffering that the hero usually has to go through, at least in my films, would have to be added, you know, that kind of thing.
Would either of you be willing not to be the hero?
Oh yeah, I think
Wouldn't
so.
you?
No, I prefer to play the villain.
You do?
Yeah, oh yeah. They get to wear the mustaches and the black hats. You bet.
One last question, of which I didn't mean in this order. Women for you. Just
say what?
the women.
I've heard them.
Yeah.
That rings a bell. Women for me?
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I have always been very reliant upon the input from the female point of view. I think that they're vastly underrated, especially when it comes to art and the perception of what sells. For example, I think that no audience, no star, if you were to use that term, can be reliant upon a male audience. The women govern the success of any, quote, superstar. Because absolutely, you have to have that audience, that belief, that kind of embracing from them, that support. If you go to a rock concert and eliminate the women, you're going to be playing the crickets. You know what I mean? They are there. And I don't think they're given enough credit about how strong their influence is. You can see, for example, that when they get behind a film, and a film that perhaps men don't want to see,
like First Women or whatever the same.
It goes to $100 million, and that's definitely not a male movie, and it's still Magnolias, and it goes on and on and on. And though we may try to deny it, we are in a somewhat feminine business.
Yeah.
We are in the business of sensitivities. We are in the land of somewhat more estrogenic than testosterone-driven performance. This is, you know, we have to call upon, quote, a female side, a performance side, a sensitive side. That's what acting is.
And you know where your feminine side is.
Yeah, it's right outside, actually. So I think she's in Florida right now.
Great to have you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Sylvester Stallone, thank you for joining us for the hour. We'll see you next time.